Today on Your Money, Your Wealth podcast number 389, should you save for a house down payment or invest for retirement? How much long-term capital gains tax do you pay on a rental property when you sell it after 20 years? And how does a 1031 exchange work? Also, opening a Roth IRA with the Backdoor Roth strategy and the 5-year Roth withdrawal rules explained. Plus, a couple retirement spitball analyses. Are you saving too aggressively for retirement? Can you avoid the Medicare IRMAA or income-related monthly adjustment amount and high taxes from required minimum distributions? Visit yourmoneyyourwealth.com and click Ask Joe and Big Al on air to send in your money questions, comments, suggestions, requests, or stories. I'm producer Andy Last, and here are the hosts of Your Money, Your Wealth, Joe Anderson, CFP, and Big Al Clopine, CPA.
All right, we got an email here. It says, Andy, can you please give me a cool alias? So what's the alias of this person?
So I came up with Abigail Scott Duniway. Our emailer is actually from Portland, Oregon. So I looked up famous women in Portland, and I came up with Abigail. She apparently was one of the first people on the Oregon Trail in 1851. Her husband suffered a farming accident, so she ended up having to support the family. She moved them to Portland. She started a women's rights newspaper called the New Northwest. She became the first woman to vote in Portland. So she was a pretty cool chick, so I decided I was going to name our emailer after Abigail here.
Okay, a little history lesson. It's good.
Little Oregon Trail.
Right? You ever been on that?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. Been near it.
All right. Hi, Andy, Joe. Now, I'm 40, and I've spent most of my life on the Oregon Trail. Most of my life not really paying attention to money or investing. I'm debt-free, but currently only have just over 1 times my annual income split between the old 401k and my TSP. Base salary is $73,000, but I currently in a unique position to pick up an extra day of overtime each week, which would almost be an additional $1,600 a month. I'm curious about what my best course of action is in regards to this new money. I'm a renter, and I'd really like to use it towards a down payment on my first home. But I also know I'm really behind on my retirement savings. Currently, my work takes a mandatory 3.1% towards my pension. Plus, I'm investing 10% into my TSP. They match 5%. And I'm maxing out a Roth IRA. Based off my current salary, my pension will be around $22,000 a year. Am I too far behind to buy a house? I live in Portland, with my
Significant other.
With my
and our 15-year-old pit bull. We drive a 15-year-old pit bull. They live that long. Drive a 2005 Corolla, and I enjoy a hard seltzer from time to time.
Or cider.
Oh, I like the hard seltzer.
He just changed it to what he wanted to drink.
You were thinking that
I was
when
being
you
selfish. Sorry. Thanks for your help. Okay, let's see. So I can help this.
Okay. I mean, while you're doing
doing
that's yours.
okay.
Yeah. So I'll just make a
73%.
couple comments. So 3.1% towards pension, 10% plus they match 5%. So you're already about 18%. We tell folks they ought to try to get up to 20% of their savings. So that's actually pretty good. You might be a little bit behind. I'm not sure you're that far behind.
No, I don't think she is, because let's say I bet she's spending $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
if she's got 73, you pay the tax, plus you put the 10% into the TSP, plus they're already taking money out for the pension and whatever benefits. I bet it's like, I don't know, 55, 60 grand a year.
Yeah. 55,
right?
60. Exactly.
Okay. So let's use $55,000, and she is 40 and she wants to retire at what, 60?
Yeah. Call it 60, 20 years.
Okay. Present value. So we got $50,000, and then we got 20 years, and we'll use 3.5% inflation. Okay, so that's she needs $100,000. Her living expenses will be roughly $100,000 in retirement.
Yeah, with inflation.
Okay, she's gonna get a pension of $22,000, and that's probably not adjusted for inflation,
right?
But it probably would be. But let's just say it's straight 22. Maybe that's today's dollars. I don't know if that's future dollars.
Sure.
So she needs $75,000.
Yeah.
You good with that number?
Yeah. And Social Security would probably be 30 at least.
Yep. Or let's call it 20 even.
Okay. Just to be conservative.
Yeah. So now that's 55. So she needs about $1 million.
Right.
Call it that.
In that range.
In that range. So she's got $100,000 roughly saved.
Yep.
And then she's got 20 years. And let's say she gets 7% on her money and she's saving with the match 10,000.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
That gets her to 825.
Yeah.
Super close.
Yeah, close.
I mean,
It depends on Social Security though, because if it's only 20,000, her fixed income's 40 and she needs 60, so she need 1.5 with that math. But
I'm assuming that the pension she's in, she's got a TSP, so she's a federal employee.
Yeah.
Right. The pension's going to have a cost of living on it potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
Social Security is going to be a little bit higher than that.
Right.
And then if her income is going to continue to increase, and she's going to probably continue to increase her savings as that increases.
Oh, you know what? She's also maxing out a Roth. So we got to add that in.
So she's really close.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know what? Use the extra money for a house if that's what you want to do. Maybe your significant other can help too.
Yeah. You're so get so on board. So 1,600. But the problem is that she's going to have to figure out a down payment.
Yeah, true.
Right. Because I think she could cash flow it. She could get a note.
Well, she could. And that's why she's thinking she'll save the extra 1,600 a month.
Okay, but
for that, but it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, it's gonna take a few years.
Right.
So what's that? $20,000 roughly a year.
You can do what I did. I borrowed money from my grandma for the down payment. Or maybe your parents or your rich brother or whoever.
Or you could maybe, depending on what she does for the government, there could be some loan programs, maybe 2% down or 3% down. We've seen some of that.
Right. Well, that's true. Yep.
But yeah, I like the $1,600 a month. I think if you continue to put what you're putting in the 401k with the match, with the Roth IRA, and then now you have this extra cash of $1,600. And if you really want to get a house, I mean, yeah,
go for it. I think you can do it.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know what segment we're on.
You're in segment 4, so you can you've got about a minute left.
Oh, so we got to keep going. I can't break early is what you're saying.
Anything else to say on that one? So personally, I think if people want to own a home, that's an important thing. And homes tend to appreciate over time. You're living in Portland, Oregon, which is on the West Coast. The coasts tend to appreciate a little bit more than the center of the country. Not to slam any, but it's just historically. Nevertheless, all properties have gone up in all areas over the past several years, and that tends to happen over the long term.
Well, the biggest thing is that if you're going to continue to rent all the way through your life, I mean, inflation's going to kill you.
Yeah, so you kind of want to lock in the housing. If that's your goal, and it sounds like it is, yeah, go for it. I think you got enough money here to do it. The hardest part is the down payment, so you got to figure that piece out.
Yep. All right. Congrats. Thanks for the question, and good job, Andy, with the alias.
Hey, I hope Abigail liked it.
We got educated.
Did that take you like a couple hours of research there?
She's
took me 30 seconds. Like I said, I just searched for famous women of Portland.
Andy's going to submit overtime for that work.
It's like, geez, man. Andy wants another $1,600 a month.
I think so.
Work. Okay, Juan writes in. Is this my buddy Juan?
No, this is a completely different one.
Okay. We bought this rental property approximately 20 years ago. We are concerned as to how much capital gains we would have to pay if we sell it now. All right.
Okay. So let's talk about how that's calculated. Well, first of all, before you even do that, when you sell a rental property, and if you want to buy another rental property for the same or greater value, you can do a 1031 exchange and not pay any tax. It just defers the tax into the next property, right? So as long as once you sell, you have 45 days after close of escrow to identify 3 potential targets to purchase. And then you have another 4.5 months after you've identified to buy one of those 3. And it's a little more complicated than that. There's other ways to satisfy it, but that's the most common one, right? If you're wanting to buy a whole bunch of properties, there's different ways to do this. But at any rate, you can avoid any current taxation. Whatever gain you would have had just rolls into the next property, and you'll pay the gain on the old property plus the gain on the new property at the time that you sell that. And if you never sell, if you pass away with it, it gets stepped up to the next generation and no one pays the tax. So think about that first of all. But secondly, If you want to sell, you need the money for other purposes, and that's just fine. Here's how you calculate the gain. You take a look at well, first of all, your tax basis. So in other words, your cost base. What did you pay for it? Paid a couple $100,000. Okay, cool. And then you put $50,000 of improvements in it over time. So that gets added. So now it's $250,000 is your cost basis, but you got to subtract out how much you depreciated. Depreciation means you can write off a piece of the property each and every year to reduce your taxes. So let's say you depreciated 100,000 as an example. So now in that example, your basis was 250, subtract 100, now it's 150. So that's one part of the equation. The second part of the equation is what you sold it for minus your closing costs. So let's just say you sold it for $1 million net of closing costs. You sold it for 1.1 million, 100,000 closing costs, just to make simple math. So 100,000 or $1 million, $1 million net sales proceeds minus 150,000 basis. You have an $850,000 gain. That's long-term capital gain. Some of that could be taxed at 0%, some taxed at 15%, some taxed at 20%. Some would be subject to the net investment income tax of 3.8%. Some would be subject to a 25% tax because it's depreciation recapture, right? Which is on the 100,000 of depreciation. So you have lots of different taxes. You just have to calculate what that would be. And that's actually the first thing you should do when you want to sell a rental is it worth my while to do a 1031 exchange? And it may not be. Maybe the tax is low enough that who cares? Just cash out and go from there.
Is there any tax forms that people get when they sell a rental?
Yeah, they get a 1099-S. So that's just 1099 sale. That's all they get, really.
Who?
That would be the escrow company.
Escrow company. Got it.
But the IRS has no idea what your tax basis is. So you're on the honor system for that.
Because, when you sell a stock, the custodian's going to send you the 1099. Yeah. But if I have a rental and then it's like, okay, well, how much did the depreciation when it, there's a lot of complex moving parts there.
However, if you've been depreciating it over time and you've included the depreciation schedules on your tax return, the IRS would know that if they really want to take the time to figure it out.
Got it. All right, cool. Thanks, Juan. It sounded like a simple question, but a pretty complex answer. That's how Big Al does it.
I make the simple complex.
It should be the other way around.
It should be.
We do have a guide that can simplify this stuff for you. Learn more about 1031 exchanges and other real estate investing strategies when you download 10 free tips for real estate investors from the podcast show notes at yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Just click the link in the description of today's episode in your favorite podcast app to get there. And while you're in the show notes, get your own YMYW retirement spitball analysis. Click Ask Joe and Al on air and send an email or a priority voice message. Tell the fellas when you and your spouse, if you have one, want to retire, how much you'll need to spend in retirement, how much you make now, what you have saved, and any other relevant details. And don't forget to give us the irrelevant details too, like your name and where you're from, where or how you listen to YMYW, your drink of choice, your pet, your car. You can make stuff up. It doesn't matter. Tell us a good story, because the show would not be a show without you. And don't forget, we also take your suggestions and requests and comments there too.
We getting 1 star this week?
Not this week, no. He loves the 1 stars, folks. Those are apparently his favorite ones. But
no. They don't like how we're so flippant.
The flippant.
Yeah.
Because
I guarantee that guy talks in third person. He's a third person talker, and he was like talking in third person, and I was blowing him up, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna have him a 1
I was explaining this to a family member this weekend, and I couldn't remember the word.
Flippant.
Yeah, I said
flippant.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Yeah, we'll keep the stars coming. I don't care what type.
Yeah, be honest if you like us.
They're fun.
5's great.
Just remember that when the amount of downloads start going down, it's not my fault, it's yours.
Well, truly, if you don't like us, let us know and let us know why. We'll try to improve it.
Look at Al. We just did the company town hall. He's all excited about input.
That's what we just said to our employees.
Hey, Joe and Big Al. Question. Am I saving too aggressively for retirement? All right. This is John from Boone, North Carolina. All right. can we scale back? Let's see if we can scale back here. So he thinks he's saving too much here, Big Al.
Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you what, John from Boone, North Carolina. I like it when we get the question up front, so we sort of know where we're going.
Yes. Can we scale back? Stop Roth IRA funding and contribute just enough to receive full employer match while having enough to support our projected retirement expenses. So, okay, little question. Thanks for the question. Now here's the context.
Okay.
He's very organized.
I like
He
it.
must be an engineer.
I think so. Or an accountant.
Something. It's just like, or maybe he wants to change the whole format of our show and say,
Right.
maybe people just throw the question up there.
Yeah.
Then
Or-
Andy puts it in bold, but it's not the question from
Right.
the people.
Right.
So then I don't
That's
like to
true.
read it. It's
so
Andy's
he
question.
could be an attorney.
Could be. Yes. This looks like a legal document. Here's the context. My wife and I are 35 years old with 2 children, 6 and 4. As our household income is on pace to be approximately $185,000 in 2022, I anticipate this will rise to the low $200,000 range in the coming years. Our expenses are roughly $75,000 per year. I would like to be able to increase our annual expenses to $90,000 to $100,000 per by the time we are 40, 5 years from now. I want to improve our quality of life while the kids are at home and we are young and healthy. This would occur mainly via housing upgrades and or more family experiences, vacations. As of July 2022, we have the following across the account types. So John wants to live it up.
Sure.
He's 35. He's like, man, I got 2 kids.
Why not? Making some good money.
Yeah, making money. It's like, I want to spend.
It's like I'm tired of being a pauper.
Roth IRA, 84,000, pre-tax accounts, 200,000, after tax, 12,000, pension plan, 36,000, home equity, 125K, cash, 25K.
Did you have that much money when you were 35?
Absolutely. Way more than that.
I did not.
I was like killing it. That was only a few years ago, but
Not exactly.
at 35, yeah, he's doing well.
Yeah.
He's doing a pretty good job. We max out my Roth 401k, $20,000, 16% of my pay, and get $5,000 pre-tax match, 50% employer match up to 8% match, 4%. I don't care about your plan. Just tell me what you're saving. My wife contributes 10% of her pay into her Roth 403b and then gets a 3% match. He is an engineer or something. He's just
Don't
telling
you
us
think?
the rules of his
The
his plan. Additionally, we max out 2 Roth IRAs, cumulative that is $40,000 in Roth contributions, and $7,200.
Okay, here we go. So 46 grand.
Thank you.
Now we got
That's
it.
the number after like this whole long diatribe. I like to continue to work into the 58 to 60 range. Sure, it's not 59, John? Maybe 59, 58 and a half.
Better be 59 and a half.
And wants to retire with enough assets to support $75,000 in annual expenses. Drink of choice. Little high noon. There you go.
You like that?
I do like high noons.
Okay. Never had
Vodka
it.
seltzers. Super crushable on those hot summer days. Yeah,
Got it.
drink those on the old golf course, Al.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Got it.
It's a nice little beverage of choice,
Got it.
especially when you play a little early, you know.
Right? You're not
High
feeling like
noon.
beer?
Well, you crack open a Coors Light at like 8 a.m. You get some weird looks.
That is true.
So
I agree with
you
that.
get a little high noon in you.
No one cares.
No one cares.
Got
Would
it.
you judge me, Andy?
I was just noticing, I was remembering the fact that so many people have called you snarky and all of that and how snarky you were being to John.
I was not being snarky. Was I being snarky?
A little bit.
Sorry, John.
Anyway, so we
I'll
get,
crush some high noons with John.
yeah. So we got
Hey, if it helps your
46,000.
golf
And if he
game,
was
go
my
for it.
friend and if he wrote, see, I treat people like I treat everyone. This is so cumbersome. I'm like, you can make it easier. It started out great.
Right.
It started out A+, and then it just slowly deteriorated from there.
So let's answer the
So
question.
you review our show and Joe will review your questions.
Yes, that's right.
That's true. $46,000 of savings, making 185, probably netting. What do you think?
He needs $2.5 million.
I know, but I'm just going to go do the back of the envelope the other way. So netting 150, So saving roughly a third of your income, yeah, that's a lot more than you need to save. I mean, we want you to save at least 20% of your income, and you're 33% or more. So I think there's some room here, and I think that's what your calculation is going to tell us.
Yeah, I bet. All right. So he wants to spend $75,000 in annual expenses. So he needs $2.5 million. No, it's less than that because you put Social Security in there. It's probably 1.7.
Right, which will happen between 35 and 58 to 60.
Yes.
I mean, easily.
Without the guy's killing it.
You're right. That's what I'm saying.
He's
You hardly have to run the math. Yeah, you're in good shape, John.
2, 3. He's got 400,000 without the home equity.
Right.
And he's
That's right.
saving $50,000 a year.
Right.
Right. So we'll call it
Yeah,
400,000.
Sure.
And then he wants to, so what is he, 35, 45,
Yeah,
55?
let's call it 25 years.
All right, 25 years.
7%.
Yep. And then at $50,000, future value, and that's 5.5. So you're like several $1 million over.
5.5 million. Now your expenses will be more by then.
Sure.
I mean, even if it's double, right?
Right. So
you got plenty.
So John, just map this out. Just take a look at your and I guarantee he's a wizard because of how he kind of calculates things. Just look at your living expenses of what you want to spend today. Just calculate that out with inflation. Use 3 to 4% inflation, right? And then that's the future need that you have. Then look at your Social Security. What is that going to be? Then you subtract your fixed income by your Social Security. But there's a bridge there, right? Because you want to retire 58 or 60, you're still going to have to wait probably another 10 years until the Social Security comes in. So your distribution rate is going to be a little bit higher at first, and then it's going to drop down. Just create a spreadsheet and build this thing out. Or you could go on to several different websites, and there's like retirement calculators to kind of give you the back of the envelope. But yeah, you're saving plenty. If you want to tone down and party a little bit and go on family vacations and do all that, I don't blame you.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think you'll have more than enough given what you're saving right now. But maybe you continue to save what you're saving, but put more into a brokerage account.
Sure.
Because then that's going to give you, you're going to have more liquidity there.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
All right. Sorry for being snarky. I got Bobbi from New York City writes in, hey guys, my drink of choice is Coke with a splash of Dr. Pepper. That sounds absolutely disgusting.
Yes, I would agree with you.
I drive my wife crazy. Well, that's witty. I like that. As in big city, drive shopping cart, no car. I'm 66. Can you tell by my AOL account?
They should have an AOL account.
Yeah, I know. Or Hotmail account.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yep. Working and making good change. I have IRAs, 401ks, Roth 401ks, but no Roth IRA. I plan to work full time, a few more years, and do not plan to start RMDs until 70 plus. Well, you have to take the RMD
at 72.
But he doesn't plan on taking them until he has to.
Yeah, I guess that's what that means.
That's a distribution versus a requirement.
Yeah.
In regards to starting the 5-year rule for future withdrawals from a Roth IRA, ultimately may consolidate all Roth 401ks to Roth IRAs. Since I cannot contribute and establish my first Roth IRA income limits, can I just do a small nominal IRA to Roth backdoor conversion to get account open? Stay safe. So Bobbi is drinking a little bit more than Coke and a little splash of Dr. Pepper when he wrote this here.
But in defense of this, the 5-year rule is pretty complicated.
Sure.
It's hard. You read it and it sounds like it says two different things,
Because it is,
right? And so that's why it gets confusing.
So let's talk about the 5-year clock. 5-year clock, there's 2 5-year clocks, one on contributions, one on conversions. And this is what people need to think about. If you take money prematurely from a retirement account, and so in most retirement accounts, it's 59.5. Everyone is pretty much, not everyone, but a lot of people that probably listen to the show is familiar with the 10% early withdrawal penalty.
Sure.
The 5-year clock has to do with the 10% penalty to some degree. Okay. So if you kind of think of it like that. So on a contribution, so you need to hold the account open for 5 years or until 59 and a half, whichever is longer, to get the tax-free treatment on earnings only.
Yeah. Earnings. And that's the key, right?
So you have a $5,000 contribution. It grows to $10,000. You are 60 years old when you made that first contribution. You have access to the contribution, but you have to wait until age 65, 5 years or 59 and a half, whichever is longer, to get the access to the other 5,000.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now the conversions is what was kind of this loophole. They had to create another 5-year clock for people doing Roth IRA conversions. So if I did a Roth IRA conversion, okay, so I've already paid the tax on the conversion, right? You have to wait 5 years on every conversion that you make or until you turn 59 and a half. So it's kind of like a back rule to have access to any of the cash.
Yeah. And that was so that you wouldn't kind of skirt the rules and avoid the penalty. And so said another way, a Roth contribution, which is $6,000 a person, 6,500 or 7,000
yeah.
for over 50. So you make that contribution. I don't care what age you are. You could do it at 22, right? At 23, you can pull that contribution out. No penalty, no tax, right? That's $6,000. But if it grew to 6,500 or 7,000 or 8,000, all that growth and income, that's taxed at your normal tax rate plus penalty. So that's where the penalty comes in. So that's a contribution. A conversion is where you take money out of your IRA and you convert it. So when you convert it, every single time you convert, you've got to wait 5 years to pull that conversion out, but you have to wait for the earnings and growth 59 and a half to avoid the penalty. But once you're over 59 and a half, it's totally different rules.
Right. Then you just kind of revert back to the contribution rules.
Right.
And so you look at it and say, okay, well, here, I've had a Roth for 5 years, then just ignore us. It doesn't matter because that first Roth, the first dollar that hits the first Roth satisfies the 5-year clock.
Right. And I think part of the confusion is, does a Roth 401k start the 5-year clock for a Roth IRA? And the answer is yes.
Well, yes.
For what we're talking about.
Yes, for sure.
Once you're over 59 and a half, we'll put it that way.
So, or the Roth IRA, if you have a Roth IRA and you're going to roll the Roth 401k into the Roth IRA, the 5-year clock still holds true on the Roth IRA. It's going to follow the longer of the two in most cases.
Yeah. So in other words, you roll the Roth 401k into a Roth IRA, you get that 5-year holding period when you started in the Roth 401k. It doesn't start over again when you start a Roth IRA.
Right. So I would look to make sure that you have, well, I would start a Roth IRA, and that's what he's asking to do here,
Yeah.
because you're going to put the money into the Roth IRA to begin with anyway. So if you're doing, but he's waiting to take RM. How old is Bobbi? You don't even know.
66.
66.
Okay, 66.
He's got an AOL account.
Here's what you do, right? You set up a Roth IRA, and if you want to do the backdoor, you can make a non-deductible IRA contribution, convert it, right? Now you have a Roth IRA, and then roll everything into the Roth IRA. I mean, it makes no difference. Or you establish a Roth IRA and roll the 401k into the Roth IRA.
Sure.
But if he's not going to touch the money for a while, I don't. This is all for none anyway.
True.
So
I just think there's confusion when you're over 59 and a half. If you got a Roth 401k, that already started your 5-year clock.
Okay. There's only two ways to get a Roth IRA established. You can make a contribution, but you need earned income to make a contribution. If you have too much earned income, then you cannot make the direct Roth IRA contribution. However, you can do an IRA contribution and convert it to a Roth. If Bobbi doesn't have any income, then he can just take one of his existing IRAs and convert it to a Roth. That would establish a Roth IRA. He's making good change.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that means he's making a lot of money.
Also, you can use your spouse's earned income. So that's another approach to do a contribution.
So, but what are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to understand the rules? Or are you trying to figure out a strategy on how to create the income or how to, these one-off questions, I guess, is, well, what's the meaning behind it?
Right. That's
do you need access to the cash right now? Does it make sense to put it into a Roth IRA? Does it make sense just to keep it into the 401k? You can still have access to the money at 401k. You're over 55, separate from service. If you retire, you can do an in-service withdrawal. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that you can potentially do versus thinking about, all right, do I do a backdoor Roth and then move the money into the Roth? Well, what's the money for? What do you, I mean, I guess we don't know really what he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, well, I read this is that there was confusion that they had to start a Roth IRA to start the new clock because the 401k is going to be rolled into a Roth IRA.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we got Janie writes back in from St. Louis. He goes, "Hey, Big Al, this is Janie again from St. Louis. You recently answered a question I recorded for you. Thanks. But I've been listening to older podcasts. In podcast 342, I think you said, and Andy and Joe agreed that if I have a Roth 401k, let's say for more than 5 years since the first contribution, and then open a new Roth IRA with the rollover Roth money from the 401k, the 5-year clock does not start over in the Roth IRA. And if we said that, that is wrong, because if you did not have a Roth IRA, the Roth will always have a 5-year clock.
Yeah. So, and I think I did say that. So first mistake in a decade.
I wasn't listening to you.
Anyway, here's what I like. Janie, and she says, "Hey, Big Al!" Exclamation point. So I say, "Hey, Janie, how you doing?"
Oh, wow. That's so bad.
Yeah.
And anyway, that Janie, that's right. I think I may have goofed that one. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, so thanks for clarifying. You guys rock. Joe questioned my character since I rarely drink, so I thought I would tell you that when I do. I really like a good IPA or Pinot Grigio. Ooh, cheers.
Right.
Janie. All right. Very good. Sorry about the confusion. So let's just kind of
let's talk about
recount that. So Roth IRAs. And see, the Roth IRA and the Roth 401k are two totally different animals.
Right.
Because a Roth 401k will have a required minimum distribution. A Roth IRA does not. Right. And so when you look at the 5-year clock, the Roth IRA has its own 5-year clock. So if you have a 5-year clock within your 401k and you've never established a Roth IRA, well, then you starting all over, but you can have the contributions out first.
Yeah.
So depending on how much money that you've contributed to the overall Roth 401k, you could probably still get by. And the likelihood of, them finding out what's basis and what's earnings after you rolling into a new Roth IRA.
Yeah. And usually, see, this is why it usually doesn't matter, right? So you roll your Roth 401k into a Roth IRA. So you start it, and if you don't have a Roth IRA, it starts the 5-year clock over again. You take withdrawals, but the withdrawals dollar for dollar use up all your contributions that you've ever made. Right. And so in most cases, there's enough contributions to cover whatever withdrawals you would need in the first 5 years. So there's no taxes. Now, that's not necessarily true. If you drain the whole account, that's a problem.
Right.
So if that's the case, if you want large withdrawals out of your Roth and you only have a Roth 401k and you never had a Roth IRA, establish a Roth IRA, but just keep it in the Roth 401k until until either the 5 years or until you've taken that big sum out, right, that you needed, and then roll the rest later.
Yeah. Or, because here's the tiered system on, and you tell me how they calculate this. Right. Because it's FIFO tax treatment. So what comes out first are contributions.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're over 59 and a half, it's conversions. And then from there, contribution dollars that have earnings. So the earnings on the contributions, then the earnings on the conversions.
Yeah.
So that's the 4 ways that the money comes out.
So
there's no way that you could ever calculate that.
Of course not. I mean, it'd be almost impossible.
Almost.
And the brokerage firms are not calculating that.
Exactly.
How would we? How would anybody?
How would anyone? So
let's see. I had an average IRA balance of X and 401k. So this and from conversions. But I think that, the most important thing, let's just say you've got a Roth IRA of $200,000. I'll be willing to bet your contributions are at least 100,000
for sure.
Right. And then we'll be generous, gross 100,000. So you roll that into a Roth IRA, even though you haven't met the 5-year clock, you can pull out $100,000 over 5 years. No problem. You just can't get the earnings until the 5 years over.
So, and then again, right, if you pull a little, I don't know how they audit that. So
I don't either.
but I guess the point is yes, if you have a Roth 401k and you do not have a Roth IRA, I would encourage everyone to open up a Roth IRA. And if you can't, convert money, or do the backdoor. And if you can't afford to pay, and if there's pro rata rules and aggregation issues that you're worried about, well, take a couple $100 and convert it into a Roth. Start your 5-year clock. Everyone should have a Roth IRA with a couple of dollars in it.
Yeah. Sure.
And then that satisfies all the other BS that goes along with these complicated rules that they put in place to confuse the average retiree.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you don't qualify for a contribution, then just do a $2 Roth conversion.
Yeah, right.
And start the 5-year clock.
Well, it might have to be $100 depending on what custodian that you use, but right. It's just something pretty nominal. And it doesn't matter how much money that you have in it. Just put something in it, and then there you go. Now you've established it. You establish your 5-year clock, and you're good to go. So then when you roll your 401k into it, you don't have to worry about it. So thanks for the correction. Remember that one time when we really blew up that TSP?
Oh, I do remember that.
Oh, my God. We got like 15 different emails on that one.
I'm not going to link to that TSP mistake, but I have included a guide dedicated to those 5-year Roth clocks in today's podcast show notes at yourmoneyyourwealth.com. It's got an in-depth breakdown on how and when you can pull money out of your Roth IRA based on whether you're under or over age 59 and a half, and you can download that for free. To get it, just click that link in the description of today's episode in your podcast app to go to the show notes, then look for the 5-year rules for Roth IRA withdrawals banner. Download the guide, read the transcript of today's episode, ask Joe and Big Al your money questions either via email or priority voice message, and share the show and free resources. For more in-depth, personalized help, click the Get an Assessment button to schedule a comprehensive look at your entire financial situation. Stress test your retirement portfolio, find out where you may be able to save more on taxes, and get a plan tailored to your specific risk tolerance, goals, and circumstances. It's all at yourmoneyyourwealth.com.
Go to yourmoneywealth.com, click on Ask Joe and Al on the air. We'll answer them right here. Need your questions to keep the show alive. No questions.
Yeah, we're
retired.
We're off.
We're off. That's good. It was a good run, Al.
Yeah, what?
It was a nice run.
Yeah, how many years? Close to 15.
Yeah. Let's go with Wilbur from Nashville, Tennessee. Love your work. Love you, Wilbur.
First of all, great city. Second of all, great name.
Oh, love it. You folks really put out some good information. My wife and I are 65 this year. She is retired, and I plan to retire in September. We will both be on Medicare after retirement. We will have no pension and other income from outside our investments until we both start Social Security at age 70. Right, so that's 5 years.
Yep.
We have been contributing to Roth accounts since they came into existence and have been doing Roth conversions up to just below the IRMAA limits 2 years ago. Our current Roth accounts are $826,000, 75% dividend producing equity funds, 25% cash and CDs. Our remaining IRA balances are $1 million or 1,041,000.
We got the cents too.
Yeah,
98 cents.
With 60% dividend producing equities and 40% cash. We avoided bonds due to anticipating rising interest rates starting 3 years ago, and then we purchased 3% 5-year CDs from our credit union. Our thought was to prepare for this market downturn with the cash and CD bucket being able to carry us for 5 to 10 years. If I supplemented by approximately $36,000 per year in dividends. We own our house in Memphis, Tennessee, and have a beach rental, North Carolina.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, very nice. That carries itself financially with some left over that has never exceeded the amount of depreciation. We own both houses and our cars with no loans and have no debt. My primary concern is what? I mean, what concern can Wilbur have?
There's no concern.
He seems like he's living the life. He's got $1 million in Roth. He's got $1 million in his retirement accounts.
It's like, this is like a case design on what to do.
It's like, he timed the market. He knew bonds were going to blow up. So he got CDs. He's got a beautiful house in Memphis. And then he goes to the little beach in North Carolina.
Yeah, which makes money. So all good. What is the primary concern?
To try to, at the very least, avoid IRMAA. That's why he's living the life, because he's afraid to spend another 50 cents on his health insurance.
To have to pay more to Medicare.
And at the very best, avoid slipping into adverse tax situations due to future RMDs. I am sure we are missing something, and welcome your thoughts on what we should watch out for in potential gotchas out there. All right. Very good. I'm glad you wrote in, Wilbur, because he realizes, he's like, you know what? I don't want to pay another dime to Medicare.
Right.
Because it's based on a progressive schedule of your income. And if you do Roth conversions, it potentially is going to put you in a higher tax bracket because you're prepaying the tax to get, a tax benefit later. But IRMAA is going to look at that, or Mama IRMAA, Medicare, is going to say, hey, your income is X, so that means your Medicare premium is Y.
Right. And so so it's around 182,000 is your modified adjusted gross income for a joint filer. If you keep your income below that, then you don't have to you don't have to pay that $170, or no, actually you do pay the $170 premium, but it doesn't go up to $238. So Wilbur, I will tell you this, it's a $50 difference times 12 months. I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's actually a lot more important to figure out, should you do more Roth conversions or not? You got roughly 7 years before your RMD. So to me, that's the bigger question.
Right. And I think that's what he's figuring out. It's like, okay, well, here, I want to keep below that so I don't increase my Medicare premium. But is he tripping over, right,
that's dollars
to pick up pennies?
$600 difference. I get it. No one wants to pay what they don't have to pay, but I think you will save more getting more money into a Roth than you will trying to figure out Medicare.
Right. Because it sounds to me that what they spend $36 some odd thousand or maybe $50,000 a year. I'm not sure what the actual number is. But you might, depending on what their spending need is,
right,
they're going to have Social Security at age 70.
Sure.
Right. For both of them. So that's going to be a big number.
Yep.
And then they have RMDs at age 72.
Yeah. Which right now at $1 million plus growth could be $1.5 million. It could be 60 grand.
Yes. 40 to 60 grand.
Right.
On top of your Social Security. And then where's that going to put you from a tax perspective?
Right.
So that's the calculation that you have to look out for.
Sure.
And then the added IRMAA. So here's the easiest way, is that the added IRMAA tax, or the payment.
Premium, you got to pay.
Premium, just add that into the tax. And so you're looking at like an effective tax, right?
Right.
So, hey, I have to pay this extra $600. So just calculate that as that's an added tax, right? And then look at what your effective rate is there versus what you feel that your effective rate is going to be when you take RMDs.
Right.
And even with the added IRMAA tax on it, or added IRMAA premium, if it's still lower than where you're going to be at RMD, it's going to make sense to do it. And that's going to help you gauge on how much that you convert. Would you agree with that?
Completely agree with that. So you just treat it like an extra tax. And that IRMAA, it's a 1-year thing, right? And it's a 2-year look back. So it means in 2 years from now, you might have to pay a little bit higher Medicare, but you just figure that. So, and if you do an extra $50,000 and it's a $600 tax, that's like 3%, right? So your tax rate plus 3% in that quick, easy example.
Perfect. Wilbur, thank you for the email and the very exact numbers that you gave us. That really helps on our calculations.
Right, to the penny. That's great.
All right, that's it for us. The show's called Your Money or Wealth.
So just how long have Joe and Big Al been on the air? That's in the derails at the end of the episode, so stick around. Your Money, Your Wealth is presented by Pure Financial Advisors. Click the Get an Assessment button in the podcast show notes at yourmoneyyourwealth.com or call us at 888-994-6257 and schedule a free financial assessment at a date and time that's convenient for you, no matter where you are in the country. Chances are one of the experienced financial professionals at Pure can help you identify strategies to create a more successful retirement. Pure Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor. This show does not intend to provide personalized investment advice through this broadcast and does not represent that the securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. Investors are advised not to rely on any information contained in the broadcast in the process of making a full and informed investment decision.
15, well, longer if you include
the
retirement radio Hour? What
Oh,
was
the-
it called?
Financial Focus. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, maybe.
That was another station, another firm.
No. Focus. No.
Focus Financial?
No.
No. I think it was the Financial Focus.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Something like
How long ago was that?
that. That was about 15 years ago.
That would have been,
05,
Two-
06.
yeah, I think you and I started together in 07. Because and you and I only did that for a year together.
No.
And then,
Yeah, that sounds about right. Late 06, early 07.
yeah. Well, you started in 06, and then I joined you in early 07.
Got it.
Were you guys as good then as you are now?
Oh, it's
Way better.
amazing.
Way better. Yeah.